All right, welcome back to Turbo Garage. So today, a different vehicle. This is a 1999 Toyota Tacoma, two-wheel drive. It's my buddy's truck. And what I'm doing on this is doing a set of brakes, front and back. They're disc front and drum rear. Um, I wasn't going to do a video on this until I did the front brake actually on the driver's side, and I'm just starting the passenger side. I thought, you know what? I'm going to do a video on this because it's not as straightforward as you'd think it would be for just a simple brake job. It's actually a bit annoying. So let's just get right to it and I'll show you what's involved. All right, so I've already got the wheel pulled off. I've got it up on a jack stand, and I'll show you what's weird about these brakes. So normally, a lot of vehicles, you just pop the caliper and bracket off and the rotor will just slide off. Not on these. On these, you've got the rotor is actually bolted to the hub. There's 5 bolts here that you have to remove. They're 14 millimeter. And to get the rotor off, you actually have to remove the whole hub off the spindle. So because it's two-wheel drive, there's bearings in there and whatnot. So you got to pop this cover off. You got to undo the cotter, pull the cotter pin, undo the nut and everything. Pull the whole hub off, and then you can separate the rotor from the hub, which is a bit of a pain. Not only that, but to get the caliper bolt out, you actually have to remove the brake line, which is, I don't know why. You know, I have a lot of respect for Toyota. They're great vehicles. They last forever if you change the oil, and they're generally well engineered. But this is just stupid that you would have the caliper bolt behind the brake line. So you actually have to, that's why I've got my drain pan here, because I'm going to have to crack this thing and break the line. So anyway, let's just get to it, and I'll show you what you got to do here. So I've actually already cracked this bolt loose. This is a 17 millimeter. I think, yeah, that one already cracked loose. This one, you can't even get a box end on here. So I'm actually going to give this a crack with a hammer. I hate using an open end, but I don't want to spend too much time with that open. So we're just going to crack, see if I can crack this loose here. Shouldn't be too bad. No, that's not bad. So once I crack this loose, and it comes into contact with the brake line, then I'll do the brake line and pop the brake line off, remove the bolt, and then tighten the brake caliper brake line back on. All right, so I've got that bolt here out as far as I can go. The next thing I'm going to do is a 14 millimeter. Just like the other side, it's a bit corroded, so I'll just tap a 14 millimeter socket on there. Got my drain pan here, so I'm going to remove the bolt. Oop, lost my light. Let's put that light back up. There we go. Don't lose that copper washer. It's very important, obviously. So with that off, I'll get this 17 millimeter bolt out here. Once you get that bolt off, you can put your banjo bolt back on. So my copper washer on. Now you can take the caliper off. Just put that over down here. And then you got two 17 millimeter bolts to hold the bracket on. They are super tight. That's why I've got this wheel turned like this, so I can get a breaker bar on there. And once you got those cracked loose, obviously then you can just use a 17 millimeter socket with a smaller ratchet and get these off. Here we go. These bolts are a little different. They've got actually a lock washer on them, so yeah, you don't need Loctite on those bolts. So now we can pull this bracket off with the pads. The next thing we gotta do is remove the spindle. All right, so to get this off, you just gotta crack this cover off. I use a cold chisel and just go in there, and it'll act like a wedge and just kind of pops it just enough that you can go in now with a flat screwdriver, give it a twist, and just work your way around and pop that cover off. There we go. Once the cotter pin's out, you take your retaining ring and then your nut. Once that nut is off, you can take the whole hub off. Be careful you don't knock your bearing and washer off. All right, now that you got your spindle off with your brake rotor, you want a 14 millimeter socket. Got my impact, and we'll just crack these out. And now what you gotta do is bang the rotor off the hub. There we go. And there's our brake rotor. Okay, next thing I do is I'm going to turn this over with a rag under it so that the bearing doesn't come out. You want to make sure you don't get any debris in here. But it's really critical that these surfaces are completely flat, because if the rotor doesn't sit on here flat, the rotor is going to wobble, and then you're going to have a terrible pulsating in your brake rotor. Now the surfaces are very good, but there's a little bit of, like where the brake rotor didn't touch, there's some corrosion here. So what I do is I just take a little file and just go around here and just lightly take this outer part down, so that just in case the new rotor is a little bit wider, you're not going to have it sitting proud on one side. So anyway, I'll just go around here and just clean this up. You're not taking a lot off, it's just getting any of the light scale and dirt that's on that outer part. There we go. That'll work. Let's go grab our rotor. All right, I'm just going to take the box that the rotor came in, lay my rotor down, and then lay my spindle or wheel hub on top of it. And then what you got to do, line up your bolt holes and try to lift this up. Actually, I might turn it on its side. You just want to catch that bolt in one of the threads there. There we go. Turn it on its side here. There we go. Get a couple of threads started on that one. And then once you get a couple started, just use your impact and just very slowly now that those are snug, we'll go and hit the impact. You'll notice I did that on the crisscross pattern. You want to do it evenly. So anyway, now we can put this back on the spindle. Okay, we're going to put the hub back on. You'll notice there's a groove in the top of the spindle that lines up with the tab on the washer here over your bearing. That on there. Put our nut on. Now, when you're doing a front wheel bearing like this, what you want to do is wiggle the rotor and hand tight. That's all you do. You do not put a wrench on this at all. And then what you do is you put your retaining washer on here, and you'll line up your hole. You can orientate it different ways. Find a spot where the hole will line up between these tabs and drive your cotter pin in. Always use your new cotter pin. I'm just going to go grab one. Okay, put a cotter pin in. I like to just go like this. Pull it over across the front of the spindle. A couple taps with a hammer. Like that. And then use my side cutters to cut it off. All right. Next thing is go ahead and put our cover back on. What I do is I just give it a little tap to hold it. Use a punch or whatever and just work your way around and tap it back in. There we go. All right, so now get some brake clean on here. And then the inside of the rotor as well. That's got her. Okay, that's that on. Next thing we're gonna do is install new hardware and pads. All right, as you can see, there wasn't much pad material left on here. They were pretty close to being done, but what you do now is just pop these clips out. Take a wire brush, brush all the debris off of here. And then snap in our new clips. Do it. And the same for the other side. I find with this vehicle, it's easier to install the pads on the bracket before you install the bracket. You know, most brakes you can install the pads after the bracket's installed, but not the case with this. But anyway, what I like to do is put a little bit of grease on the end of the brake here on the backing plate, and then slide it in. All right, with our brake pads installed, next thing we can do is obviously install the bracket back onto the truck here. All right, so these brackets are torqued to 80 foot-pounds. With those torqued, next thing I got to do is push the piston back in. Before you push your piston in, double check your master cylinder. Make sure it's not filled right up, because if you start pushing these pistons back in, you'll overflow your master cylinder. So I got to go check that right now. We'll just push this piston back in. I like to put a little bit of grease on the front of the caliper here where it touches the pad and on the face of the piston. You got to carefully get your boots in here. You don't want to pinch those. And the bolts, the caliper bolts, you want to clean those up, inspect them for any corrosion. These looked really good, so I can reuse those. So the bottom one I can get easy. Obviously the top one, I've got to remove the brake line again to slide that bolt in and tighten it up, and then I can redo the brake line. Don't know why Toyota did that, but that's what they did. I'll get my tank or my drain pan down here. Again, watch your banjo bolt copper washers. You don't want to lose those. These get torqued to 65 foot-pounds or tight. Okay, you may have to get new washers just to have a close look at them and make sure there's no debris or anything on there. And then what you're going to do is get these, I don't know what the torque is on this, I just get these fairly tight so I can kind of feel the copper washers squishing. Then give them a shot with some brake clean. All right, so that's got the front brakes done. Before you roll the vehicle though, pump the brake a few times to make sure the pistons are all the way out so the brakes will work. If you've ever done brakes and not done that, and then you go hit the brakes, it doesn't work. So it's a bit scary. But anyway, moving on to the rears. Rears are drum. I hate drum brakes. I didn't like those front brakes that much, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to hate these rear brakes even more. Anyway, first thing that I do is try and get this drum off. That can be a challenge in itself. So, hopefully, oh geez, oh wow, that was super easy. Let's hope, oh my God, look at all the crap in there. So yeah, so we're gonna replace the shoes, and I've also got new drums as well. So what I like to do is take a picture. I'm gonna clean this all out with some brake clean, and then I'll take a photo of how the springs look, because otherwise you got to use the other side of the vehicle as a reference. So let's get this cleaned up. There, that's better. So we'll start with removing these spring clips. Ooh, I was worried that might happen. Almost went down my drain pan. I better move that out of the way. There we go. There. All right, now I should be able to pull these bottom brakes off. Unhook this little spring down here. That's got that brake off, and this one should just come right out. There we go. So what I'm going to do now is basically put this together on the other brake shoe. And then this one, we just got to disconnect the emergency brake. Looks like that spring's got to come off. There's a little clip on the back here that we got to undo. I gotta get a screwdriver for that. There we go. Now this one's got like a bent clip on here, so you need a screwdriver to pry this apart, and then you use pliers to bend it back again. There, so I'll get that with my pliers now. All right, now, before I pull this off, I'm gonna get my new brake shoes here so I can put it right back on. There we go. Where'd that little horseshoe piece go? Should be a lot easier to put on than take off. Basically just slide it on like that. You got to make sure this horseshoe is all the way down so that it can get into that groove. That's got it. And now this little piece has to go on. I don't know if I remember how it went. Like that. Jesus, I hate these things. I gotta remember how they go together. I thought this went under here. Like that. All right, that's got that on there. Hooked into the right down there. There we go. Okay. I do believe that is correct. All right, let's get this brake shoe on here. Oops. All right, one thing I forgot, which is pretty important actually, otherwise you're gonna have squeaky brakes, is put a little bit of grease on these three little contacts here where the brake shoe touches. So I forgot to do that on this shoe here, so I'll pop this clip off and quickly put some grease on there. All right, let's put this shoe on here. Get that over there. We'll get our retaining pin on. These tools sure make it easy. If you haven't got one of these and you have to do rear brake shoes, you're gonna want it. There we go. Now I'll just push that in there. There we go. That's the bottom spring. We just got to put this one spring on here and we'll have it, which is the most challenging one. There we go. Let's tap that in. There we go. All right, it might not have been the most correct way to do it, but it worked. All right, this shoe wasn't all the way in. There was something not quite right, but anyway, now I can adjust the brake just by spinning this little star wheel here, and then put the brake on the drum. There, that's actually almost, I can feel it just dragging a little bit. Let's go a little bit more. That feels pretty good. So what happens is when you adjust your brakes, when you hit the brakes and go backwards and when you're in reverse and you hit the brakes, it will adjust every time, take up the slack. That should be good. All right, so we'll pop the wheel back on and that'll take care of this drum brake, and then I'll do the other side. All right, it's getting late. I'm getting tired. And I did something really stupid. I don't know if you noticed it, but I put the old brake shoe right back on. I was going to throw the old brakes away, and I realized I still had 3 new shoes. Anyway, it's all back together. Both are new shoes, and I'm going to put this drum brake back on, put the wheel on, put the truck back into the garage here, and call it a night, and do the last wheel tomorrow. So there you go, that's the brakes done, that little Toyota. I did the last wheel this morning and just dropped the truck off to my buddy's place. Adjusted the fan belts, actually they were squeaking a bit, and gave the engine a clean. It was filthy, but anyway, that's done. He's happy, the brakes work great. Yeah, if you got a little Toyota Tacoma, hopefully this video might help you. If you got a 2-wheel drive truck, 4-wheel drive will be a bit different. I think that'll be easier, much easier for a 4-wheel drive. But anyway, thoughts and comments down below. And hey, if you haven't subscribed already, think about doing so, because I got lots of content coming up for this summer. So thanks a lot for watching, and have yourself a great day.